Michael, how you doing, man?
Doing well.
How are you looking at this? Do you have any general thoughts on the Cowboys' schedule and any takeaways for particular sections of the season that you think are particularly difficult?
I saw the. Can you hear me okay? Sorry.
Yeah, I got you now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I saw the 3 of 4. There's 2 stretches this season where the Cowboys will play 3 of 4 games on the road. And the first one happens right before the bye week, and the second one happens right before the playoffs begin. And in each of those stretches, you have at least one game where you got to figure the Cowboys are going to be able to stack themselves up against one of the NFL's best, or we'll have a good chance to gauge them in terms of where the Cowboys are at that particular stage of their season. And the first one comes on the road against the 49ers, and then the second one comes in December against the Buffalo Bills on the road again. And so those 2 stretches, and in particular those 2 games, seem striking. I think it's funny that the schedule comes out, and too often we react to the opponents. But we've known the opponents for months. I mean, we could have a pretty in-depth conversation about what the Cowboys opponents are going to look like in 2024 and even 2025 and so forth. So, yeah, it's really about the structure of the schedule. So that's kind of what stood out to me when I saw the structure of the Cowboys.
Is it there's also 2 stretches in here where they go long road trip, back home, long road trip, back-to-back weeks, at Niners, at Chargers, and then at Bills, at Dolphins. Is that are those 2 stretches that you think are forget the quality of opponent, because they're all 4 of them are good opponents, but the travel, is the travel difficult?
Yeah, I think I'm sorry, I got the room in the house, and I mean I can move if it continues to be an issue. But when I looked at the one part of the Cowboys schedule that included back-to-back trips of Buffalo to Miami, I've covered a team in terms of the Raiders years ago, and when that sort of travel showed up, I decided to just stay on the East Coast rather than go, Buffalo, and you go back to your hometown, and then you go back out to the East Coast. Granted, the Raiders were in Oakland at the time, so West Coast travel is different than traveling into Dallas, but nonetheless, I think you get travel. It'll be a valid question when Mike McCarthy next speaks. Is that something that you guys are amenable toward of maybe staying on the road? And given the Cowboys are here in kind of the middle of the country somewhat, be it south, and the state of their facilities, I could see them just deciding we're just going to stay home. We'd rather be home. But I still think it's a valid question given the travel. It is an opportunity to break it up.
Michael, Cowboys rookie minicamp is getting underway today. We've got the next couple days of instruction. It's a lot of teaching and not so much the same sort of practice chatter that you would hear from OTAs or regular minicamp or things like that. But is there anything in particular that you're interested in finding out about this week, whether it's which coaches are working with, DeMarvion Overshown, for instance? How much is the stance tweaks we heard about Mozzie Smith? How much of that is in play? Is Asim Richards, is he somebody who's going to be taking reps at all 3 spots or getting instruction at all 3 spots on the offensive line? What are some of the things that you're looking for here at rookie minicamp?
Yeah, I think, first, you want to see your ideally, like Mozzie Smith should be the best player on the field. He should look incredible when we see him, and by all indications, he will. In terms of his physicality, I'm interested to see how the Cowboys tweak his stance. That's going to be something that we're going to be monitoring over the course of training camp, over the course of the spring. There's some unlocking that can be done as it pertains to his pass rush ability. The Cowboys feel just by merely a change in stance and scheme, and so that I think will be really interesting to see him get comfortable in that respect. Then I think you kind of probably can go down the list. I think there's something for every guy. But Luke Schoonmaker, the tight end out of Michigan, the second-round draft pick, he's going to be, I think, a real impact player right away. That's what the Cowboys believe they have. And I like to do this exercise after the draft where I get on the phone with different teams around the league and really gauge what people think about the Cowboys draft, because I think it's a bit of a misnomer. When we talk about, this pick was a reach or this pick was a steal, and we base that on outsiders in terms of the industry, but we really should be talking to teams, the ones with the medical, the ones with the full understanding of character and so forth. And I heard a lot of really good things about what the Cowboys got And obviously not just Mozzie Smith in round one, but as well Luke Schoonmaker and their belief, their belief around the league that this is a quality, balanced football player who's going to bring a lot to the Cowboys in short order. So this will be my first opportunity to see him in person. So I'll be looking personally to see that.
We're talking with Michael Gehlkin, covers the Cowboys for the Dallas Morning News. You can follow him on Twitter at Gehlken NFL. Michael, there's this chatter out there. We don't know how real some of it is. Some of it's been perpetuated by the owner and general manager. But this chatter that won't seem to die about a potential Ezekiel Elliott reunion, how realistic do you think that is? And is it something where the more time that passes where he doesn't have a job, the more realistic it could become that he ends up back here?
Yeah, it's funny because I think there's a lot of different thoughts that are going through my mind as I try to answer that question. I think Jerry, based on, the few years that I've been around him, but if you want to just look at the Odell Beckham Jr. situation, there's a bit of a tendency there to talk about something for, because it's interesting, because it's intriguing, because it's engaging with the public, certain scenarios of potential player acquisition, when there really isn't a realistic chance, or maybe the wins aren't exactly what are being portrayed, but you talk about it publicly as if it's more imminent than perhaps it is, or there's more interest than there is. And I think that's a bit of what happened with OBJ, where we talked a lot about that when privately the Cowboys weren't exactly where they seemed to intimate publicly that they were. But when it comes to Ezekiel Elliott, I think it's valid that we talk about him until he signs elsewhere. As long as he's available, to me, based on what I've heard from back channels of how the Cowboys have kind of made their interest known, what they've told different people around the league, it has, to me at least, seemed, and this was albeit before the Ronald Jones signing, but it seemed like there was, inside the building, a non-ruling out of the possibility that Ezekiel Elliott could return. That being said, they did assign the guy's number. So if Zeke's back, he won't be number 21. He'd probably be like number 15 and negotiate that from Will Greer. It almost seems like the Cowboys have moved on in some respects, but for a team that wants to run the football as much as Mike McCarthy does, I wouldn't rule out them doing something at running back just because of it being such an importance to them, and they do think so highly of Zeke, and they still think, as it relates to certain situations, kind of a tight space, things that come up in terms of the red zone and third and short, those sorts of situations. They really think he's a plus player still in this league. So I'm not ruling it out until he's gone elsewhere. But yeah, with this organization, there can be smoke sometimes when they talk about a potential acquisition, just because there's a public engagement of they know that we'll talk about it until the situation is resolved.
Michael Gehlkin joined us here on The Fan. Dak, Diggs, Lamb, where do you see the timeline for those extensions happening?
Okay, so this is more my opinion, but I would think that typically you try to take care of the quarterback. So I would think that would be a focus, given the just nature of a quarterback contract, in terms of the structure of the deal, the cash flow, and all those sorts of things. It really dictates your books elsewhere. So it would make a lot of sense to want to check the Dak box first as it pertains to his contract extension. To me, CeeDee Lamb is right there. I think that's a deal that the Cowboys really want to get done this offseason. And as it relates to Trayvon Diggs, I'm just not sure that we see that get done in 2023. Maybe we do, but I think it's far more likely that Dak and CD get done this year than it is with Diggs. And so we'll ultimately, that's just one man's thought on tea leaves, but that would be my general expectation, is that I would look for Dak. I would look for CD. And I think you can make the argument that you should take care of Terence Steele before you take care of Trayvon Diggs. But we'll see what direction the Cowboys go and when they hit those different spots.
I'm glad you mentioned Steele there, because that's one that's kind of been quiet. Do you think is it imperative that they get an extension done with one of Diggs or Steele so that they're not left hanging, having to pick on who to tag? It's similar to where they ran into that with Amari and Dak, where it was like, well, we've got one tag and now we got to kind of expose somebody to the free agent market. Is it just a requirement that they've got to get one of them done here?
I think there's validity to that. And to me, Terence Steele is a type of guy that you want to pay. Like, he embodies so much of what draft and develop means. I mean, we talked a lot about, all the draft picks that we're going to see on the field at rookie minicamp. Let's not forget that Terence Steele was an undrafted rookie who, if I'm not mistaken, arrived here during the COVID-19 offseason, like 2020, 21, 22. Yeah, this is his fourth season in the league. That's right. So it's what he's done for a guy who showed up here undrafted, who showed up without the ability to have a screen, without the ability to have, a full training camp, without the ability to step on the field in the preseason as a rookie, all those things, and to be thrown in the fire year one and to win thereafter, back-to-back off-season awards for what he's doing in the weight room. And by all indications, has had a phenomenal recovery from his ACL. This is a guy, just character, work ethic, the way he's gritty in terms of, you look at what he does against the run. If you were to go frame by frame after the snap, last season, so often if the Cowboys are running some of their bread and butter plays in the run game, it's Terence Steele who's off the ball first. And so his first step and all those things, he just sets a tone in a lot of ways. So to me, you jump at the chance to take care of Terence Steele, and you have to pay him as a tackle. There's been conversations about potentially moving him this season to guard, and we very well could see that come to fruition. But you've got to pay him as a tackle because that's what he is for your organization long term. But I think you get it done, and I think you get it done over 6 years, something like that. A very long-term deal that we've seen the Cowboys do with offensive linemen. They feel comfortable projecting that position forward across several years. We've seen that with Frederick deal. We've seen that with the Tyron Smith deal, and I think we should see it with Terence Steele.
Last one for you here, and obviously a lot can change, a lot can develop over training camp and this offseason, everything else. But right now, if I said, Michael Gehlkin, you got to lay a bet down, who is the starting left guard, everybody healthy week one of the NFL season?
There's something that Mike Solari, the Cowboys' new offensive line coach, has said, and that is that he wants to start the best five. And look, I haven't seen some of the new additions the Cowboys have made. Chimadoga, they have Josh Ball. They want to do more with him at guard, and there's some other guys there in the mix, Team Richards now. But I can't, based on what I've seen, imagine Terence Steele not being in your best five. And so based on that preliminary feel of the Cowboys offensive line room, I would say Terence Steele. Now, I haven't seen Terence Steele play guard before. What his comfort level will be for someone who doesn't get an opportunity to do a whole lot of it in the spring. I don't think we're going to see a lot of him in the spring coming off of the ACL, but in camp, he should be. Again, we'll see. But should be full go. There's a lot more that we need to really see firsthand before we can comfortably project Terence Steele at left guard. But I would think that he's your starter there.
Michael Gehlkin is one of the very best reporters on the Cowboys beat, covering them for the Dallas Morning News. You can follow him on Twitter at Gehlken NFL, where you can also wish him congratulations on his new daughter. Michael, thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you out at the Star soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.